Hey, guys, welcome back. I hope you're having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People Story. I've lived in my house for over 30 years now. It's nothing too fancy, just a regular suburban home, but it's been good to me and my family. When we first moved here, the neighborhood was still being developed. There were empty lots on either side of us that had yet to be built on. Over the decades, I've seen houses go up around us as the area grew, but the lot right next door remained vacant. Since it bordered my property, I tried to keep it tidy. I mowed the grass and cleared any brush that cropped up. The city knew the land was unoccupied, so they never sent a tax bill for it. About 5 years ago, a woman moved in across the street. Right from the start, she rubbed people the wrong way. She was one of those types who thinks everything should go her way. She'd yell at kids for playing in the street, complain if someone's fence was an inch on her side of the property line, stuff like that. We nicknamed her Karen because she fit the stereotype perfectly. Karen took a special disliking to my family. She'd glare at us from her front window whenever we were in our yard. If a ball bounced into her grass, she'd throw it back like she was spiking a volleyball. My kids were scared to go near her place, which was a shame because the rest of the neighborhood kids often played street hockey across from her house. The vacant lot became another point of contention. Whenever I mowed it, Karen would come outside and stare at me, her arms crossed. One time she marched over and said, "You need to stop trespassing on my land." I tried to explain nicely that the lot didn't belong to anyone, but she refused to listen. After that, she started calling the city to complain about me doing yard work on her property. Of course, the city told her it wasn't hers, but Karen just wouldn't let it go. Things escalated when I went out to mow one weekend and found Karen already in the vacant lot doing the work herself. I turned my mower around and went back inside, not wanting to cause a scene. But the next weekend, the same thing happened. It became a ridiculous turf war, with each of us trying to mow the lot first. This went on for a couple of months until finally I'd had enough. I called up my friend Eddie, who works in City Hall, and explained the absurd situation. Eddie looked into the property records and confirmed what I already knew. The vacant lot had no owner. He said he'd talk to the mayor and figure something out. A few days later, I got a call from Eddie saying the mayor wanted to meet with me and Karen to resolve this. The next evening, we all gathered in the mayor's office. Karen's hands were on her hips and she had that pinched look on her face that I'd come to know all too well. The mayor explained that the vacant lot was city property and asked Karen to explain why she believed she owned it. "I have been maintaining that land for years," Karen snapped. "I weed it, mow it, and make sure no pests get in. I pay taxes on it too." The mayor calmly asked, "Do you have any documentation showing you've paid taxes?" "Of course not," Karen huffed. "The city hasn't sent me any tax bills for it, but I've paid taxes on my own house for over 20 years. I should own that land too." The mayor shook his head. "I'm afraid that's not how it works. Without deed or title, you have no claim on that property." Karen's face turned red with anger. "This is ridiculous. I have been caring for that land far better than this fool," she shouted, pointing at me. "Ma'am, there's no need for name-calling," the mayor said. "Now here is what we're going to do. I will have the city send maintenance crews to keep the lot tidy until we decide what to do with it. Both of you may submit proposals for what you'd like to see that land used for. But until further notice, neither of you owns it or has the right to occupy it. Do I make myself clear?" Karen looked like she wanted to continue arguing, but the mayor gave her a stern look. Through gritted teeth, she muttered, "Yes." I simply nodded in agreement, just wanting this silly feud to end. The mayor dismissed us, and I thought that might be the last of it, but a few days later, I glanced out my window and saw a strange car parked at the curb near the vacant lot. I watched as Karen emerged from the car carrying some tools. She proceeded to start digging holes in the dirt. I immediately went outside and confronted her. "What do you think you're doing?" I demanded. "I'm planting trees," Karen said matter-of-factly. "This is going to be a beautiful orchard. I got approval from the city." Somehow I doubted that, but I snapped some pictures on my phone just in case. "The mayor said neither of us can use this land," I reminded her angrily. "The mayor said we could submit proposals. This is my proposal. Now get lost," Karen shouted back. I'd finally had it. This disregard for rules and basic decency was the last straw. I called Eddie at City Hall and explained what was happening. He promised to send someone right away. 20 minutes later, a police car rolled up. 2 officers got out and had Karen show them the supposed approval for this orchard of hers. Of course, she had no such paperwork. The cops made her stop digging immediately and confiscated her shovel and tools. As Karen glared daggers at me, the officers explained she could be fined for destruction of city property if this continued. With a few more choice curse words thrown my way for good measure, Karen stomped off to her house empty-handed. The cops made sure to take pictures of the half-dug holes and damaged ground. They told me this would only bolster my proposal for a kids' recreation area with playground equipment and sports fields. The vacant lot was the perfect size and location for neighborhood children to have a safe place to play. I attended the next city council meeting and presented my proposal, along with the photographic evidence against Karen's illegal digging. In the end, the vote was unanimous in favor of the recreation area. Not only did it make the most sense for the space, but the council members wanted to send a message that blatant disrespect for city property and the law would not be tolerated. The vacant lot has now been turned into a real gem of our neighborhood. On any nice day, you'll find kids playing soccer, shooting hoops, or going down the slide in swings. Neighbors gather on the benches to chat while keeping an eye on the little ones. My friend Eddie cuts the ribbon at the grand opening ceremony as the mayor shakes my hand and thanks me for this community contribution. Meanwhile, Karen watches bitterly from her front stoop, knowing she's lost this battle but surely plotting new ways to make life miserable for the rest of us. Some people only learn lessons the hard way. I know Karen's ornery ways won't change overnight, but the joyful laughter of children at play is a pretty nice reminder that sometimes the good guys still win. As for me, I'm just happy that vacant lot is finally being put to good use. The next one is a pro-revenge story. I met a guy while vacationing in California one summer. A really nice guy who always wanted to do something fun and different every day. From hiking, paintballing, swimming, or going out on the ocean. After the vacation ended, we kept in touch. And over the course of the next year, we decided I would move to California. I work in healthcare as a nurse, so getting a job almost anywhere isn't tough. Just as the new nurse, your hours are going to be challenging, no surprise. So, after we've lived together for a few months and my hours being terrible, they go back to normal hours, and we can really spend more time together. I'm not really one to snoop around. He had a safe in the bedroom where we kept basic safe stuff like passports, SS cards, birth certificates, etc. One day I had to produce my birth certificate and had to go into the safe while he wasn't home. I found my birth certificate easily, but next to it was a birth certificate with an entirely different name and DOB than his. So I asked him about it, and he got super defensive and yelled at me for snooping. Totally out of character for him, as I've never seen him yell before. I still wanted to know WTF, and based on his reaction and the fact I moved to a different state to be with him, I deserved to know if he was hiding anything. A few days later, he finally tells me the truth. He used to be married and had twins. This caught me off guard because normally you tell someone you are in a relationship with if you have kids. That doesn't bother me as much as him using a different name than his real name is. So he decides this is the time to be totally honest with me. Tells me he didn't want to pay child support or alimony because she was cheating on him, but he couldn't prove it in court, and he believed the kids weren't his, even though he also admitted they did a paternity test and he's the father. So he simply started using his old friend's name and information that he, for some reason, had after they were college roommates. So many red flags are now flying. Why did he have his roommate's birth certificate and social? He never did answer that, and Googling the name never did turn anything up. Then he decided to admit he's been cheating on me ever since I moved out here, since we are being honest. And he finally could share his life with someone. What the duck? So I moved out that very night to sleep on another nurse's couch. He, however, refused to leave me alone and eventually started to threaten me over the phone. A big mistake, as he had just admitted to skipping out on child support, alimony, court orders, and identity theft. I started looking up his hometown and state, one thing he didn't seem to lie about, and found public records of his divorce and tracked down his ex-wife on Facebook. After she finally responded about a week later, she confirmed from pictures it was him and was really interested in knowing where he was. Turns out he not only skipped out on child support and alimony, but he also stole her car years ago when he left and opened several credit cards in her name before he decided to leave town and was wanted for all of that. I mildly kept in touch with him, telling him I needed time to figure it all out before we could try again. About 2 months later, he was arrested and began proceedings to get him transported back to his home state. He did call me from jail for about a week, but I refused to pay for the calls. He then had his attorney contact me, and I told his attorney that if he ever contacted me again, I'd call the cops for harassment. I then started searching his name and everything through his home state's court access site and found out he was sentenced to 6 years for the credit cards, motor vehicle theft, theft of a firearm, and several contempt of court charges. I kept in contact with the ex-wife for a bit, and she was thankful they finally found him. Also, for a bit more on top, it turns out once he gets out of prison in his home state, he will be arrested and charged for the stuff that they uncovered and figured out in California over the past few years. Turns out he also did a good amount of credit card fraud out there, so don't threaten to smash someone's face in for breaking up with you if you are committing identity theft and are on the run from child support. The next one is a petty revenge story. I worked for Subway a while back and always took on people's shifts because people are lazy and I like money. One day I got a call from a girl, I'll call her Gertrude, who I worked with at another store, asking me to cover for her the following day because she sprained her ankle. I was scheduled to work at the same time as her, but promised I'd do my best to find someone to cover for her. Unfortunately, the only person who wasn't working or unavailable was the biggest screw-up in the store. Karen seems fitting. I reached out to Karen, told her about Gertrude's predicament, and that she was scheduled for a 6-hour shift, which followed mine. I told her I'd stay and cover her shift if she worked the 4-hour shift for Gertrude. I was actually surprised when Karen said yes. I called Gertrude back to tell her the good news, and all was well in the universe. The next morning, 2 hours before Gertrude's shift started, she called me all concerned, asking if I knew anyone else that could cover the shift. I asked her what happened to Karen, and she said Karen texted her saying she can't make it. I was pissed. I texted Karen and asked why she couldn't go, and she said she didn't have a ride. I told Gertrude, who then offered to pick Karen up and drop her back off. I texted Karen to tell her Gertrude was willing to drive her, and all I got back was, "Nah, I'm good." I was so mad, especially since I was the one who came up with the bright idea to give Karen any semblance of confidence. I apologized profusely, and Gertrude said she'd figure something out. Turns out she ended up working for 2 hours on a jacked-up ankle before her manager came in to send her home. When I was almost done with my shift, Karen texted asking, "Can you still cover my shift?" Any other day, I would have said yes without hesitation, but she made me look bad and made a poor girl go to work on her feet with a busted ankle, so I waited until half an hour before her shift started and responded, "Nah, I'm good." Karen showed up pissed as hell, and I didn't say a word to her. I sent Gertrude a screenshot of the conversation, and she was super grateful and said I made her day. Does this make me an Avenger? Or a Revenger, at least? The next one is a malicious compliance story. When I was in college, I used to work for my local movie theater. The job was amazing most of the time. You had a lot of freedom from the managers if you did your job right. On a busy night, this was the situation. I was working behind the bar. We had a system where we would sell tickets and concessions at the same registers. Most of the time, this would work just fine. But on a busy Saturday night, it would take a lot of time to take ticket orders, discuss seating in the theater, and get all the food and drinks. On this evening, everything was running smoothly. It was a busy night, but the team was well prepared, and we had everything under control. I was taking an order from a longtime customer. Let's call her Linda. Linda was a nice woman, and we always had a nice chat with her. She was 25 and had a subscription at our theater. This would mean it would show her picture on the app with her date of birth and a QR code. This way, we could see that the person was old enough to see the movie. Linda was ordering some nachos and 2 beers. Now I know that Linda is well above the legal drinking age, in my county 18, and had already scanned her QR code. You would get points for free stuff when you bought drinks and food. I already knew her age was all right, so no reason to ask for any form of ID. So I'm here getting the order ready, and when I say the total to Linda, a lady behind her, let's call her Karen for obvious reasons, starts yelling, "Karen, you didn't check her ID." Linda looks over her shoulder, probably wondering why this woman is meddling, and turns back to me. "Do you really need to see my ID? I could grab it if you want to." So I'm here thinking, Karen should STFU and mind her own business. Me. "No need to, Linda. I know you're older than 18, and it also says so on the app." Karen. "No, you need to check it. You need to check everyone that buys alcohol." Me. Miss, I already verified her age, and Karen, no, only a legal ID or passport is good to verify age. Sure, this is the case in a normal situation, but when a customer has a subscription at our theater, they already have to verify their age and name with a legal ID, so we accept the app as a legal form of verification. At this point, I'm already losing my patience. Why is Karen meddling in this situation when Linda is clearly over the age of 18? Me. Miss, thanks for bringing this to my attention, but this woman is a loyal customer and we already know her age because… Karen. No, this is unacceptable and you should check her ID. I'm really starting to get annoyed and Linda is noticing as well. Luckily, Linda is a chill woman and smiles at me while grabbing her ID. Linda, here it is, all good, right? Me. Sorry for this and thanks for showing, it's still not necessary though. Linda, no problem at all, and good luck with her, she says while smiling and giving me a wink. I finalize the purchase and get ready to enjoy serving Karen. Karen has a major attitude, and the order takes ages. She doesn't like the seats and changes them a couple of times. She also demands a student discount, which we don't have on Saturdays, and she is clearly older. Finally, she orders her food, and last but not least, she orders a red wine. This triggers me instantly. I'm standing there with a big smile on my face like a kid in a candy store. You all see where this is going. I grab the wine and put it on the counter. Then I say with my most polite voice, Me, can I see your ID, miss? Karen, excuse me? Me, well, miss, as you pointed out to me, I should check everyone for ID. Karen, well, I'm obviously older than 18. Sure, Karen wasn't looking anywhere near 18. But she didn't hit prime Karen age either. I would say she was in her early 30s, but with all that plaster on her face, she could pass for a 25-year-old. Me, miss, the woman I asked before you is well over the age of 18. You insisted I follow the rules. If you don't have your ID with you, I can't sell you the alcohol. Karen, preposterous. I demand to speak to the manager. Me, sure, I will get him. Now the manager this evening was Bob. Bob hated types like Karen, and I knew he would stand by my side. So I go grab Bob and inform him of the whole situation. When I explained it all, Bob smiled at me with a huge grin on his face. Bob, let's go have some fun. So Bob walks with me to the registers and Karen yells the whole story. Bob listens carefully and then reminds her of the rules and she needs to have some ID or she won't get her wine. Karen is done with the situation, I could clearly tell. The preview's already started, so she grabs her wallet and pulls out a public transport card. Karen, here you go, it states I'm old enough. Bob, sorry miss, this isn't a legal form of ID. Karen at this point is bright red, and I thought she would burst out in anger. Karen, I demand you sell me this wine. This is ridiculous, and I'm about to miss the movie. Bob, nothing I can do for you without ID, miss. I should also note that when the previews are over, usually after 15 minutes after starting time, we can't let you go inside the theater because this will cause a disturbance for the other visitors. At this point, I wish I could have taken a picture of Karen's face. The utter face of defeat was amazing to see. Karen, fine, just keep the wine. I'm going to see the movie and then I'm never coming back here. Bob, that's a shame, miss. That will be XXX, please. After the whole incident, I got a compliment from Bob for sticking to the rules and for defeating a Karen in her own game. The next one is an entitled People Story. I live in an apartment building with no parking, so I have no choice but to park on the street. My street also has a school on it that prohibits parking on its side Monday to Friday until 6 p.m. The other side has 2-hour parking, even for permit holders. The entire area is permit parking only, which I have. So there are a total of about 7 spots on my block where permit holders can leave their cars. Because of this, I can never get a spot on my block, and I park 1 block down, which is the same permit zone. This area is all houses, and each one has a driveway. I typically don't use my car every day, but never go without it for long stretches unless I'm traveling. It's also a parking violation here to leave your car in one spot for longer than 72 hours, which apparently some people take very seriously. Recently, one of my neighbors has been leaving a note on my car every single week. This is not an exaggeration. I've gotten 4 notes in the last 4 weeks citing the above parking code, even if my car has only been there for less than 2 days. The note always says that I can't leave my car in one spot for multiple days, which technically I have 72 hours. I always ignore the note because even if I do get reported, which I'm sure I have been, someone from the city comes out the next day for an inspection, and then monitors the vehicle for the next 72 hours to see if it's still there. This law is really to prevent abandoned vehicles, not for people getting upset about cars parked in front of their houses for multiple days. The hilarious part is that the note goes on to say how disrespectful it is to your neighbors to leave your cars parked in front of their houses. But constantly leaving notes on cars is totally respectful. This has been going on for months, but this was the first time I got 4 notes in a row, and now I'm going for the high score. I know it's a law, and I rarely leave my car parked in one spot for longer than 3 days. Never more than a week unless I'm traveling, in which case I leave it at the office to avoid street sweeping. Also, my car isn't old, dirty, or looks abandoned. This person truly just has nothing better to do with their life. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.